Hello everyone, today's poem is Xiaoya, 湛露, a Xiaoya poem from the Book of Songs. This poem looks at the first glance, it's quite normal and easy poem describing the drinking party. So basically we have many sort of the poems. The whole poem is about the drinking party, or part of the poem is about drinking party, and normally it's very simple and straightforward. So does of this poem. But the specialty of this poem is it's founded the concept of duel in the morning. And this is a very important image in the classic Chinese literacy, and we can check it later. And the other thing is from the atmosphere described in this poem. These poems could be in the early Zhou time, which is quite prosperous and before the declining of the Zhou dynasty. So from this poem we can feel the abundance and we can feel the satisfactory, the peaceful inner mind through this poem, and which all resembled or implied a great time, a strong, powerful, and wealthy time. And another side talk is through the Chinese history, there's four dynasty, or it's not a dynasty, it's period, could be called as the prosperous period in Chinese, 盛世. So the first 盛世, the prosperous time period, happened in the Zhou dynasty, which was so-called 成康之治, the Emperor Cheng and the Emperor Kang in the Zhou dynasty. And the second one, of course, is the Han dynasty. And the third, of course, is the Tang dynasty. So basically, the first three prosperous period, 盛世, all happened in the same place. The place at or quite near to Xi'an city today, the capital. And the fourth prosperous period, so-called 康乾盛世, the prosperous period of Emperor Kangxi and Qianlong. Anyhow, there's some arguments if the fourth prosperous period could be claimed as a prosperous period because it's not like such prosperous. And the first three prosperous period, 盛世, there's no doubt they are the best time in the Chinese history, and everybody agree on that claim. Anyhow, the best time in the Chinese history is not the three prosperous period or the four prosperous period. It was the time in the epic stories time, and the Confucius call it as 天下为公. So under the heaven, everything is commonwealth. Everything is for the public interest. So that was the best time from the Confucius time. We think that's the best time. And the four prosperous period could be so-called as 小康. So today, the modern Chinese, today's Chinese, we are endeavored to achieve the status as 小康. So this term actually starts from the Confucius time, which means it's not everything under the heaven, not all could be categorized as commonwealth. Not everything is for the common interest. But anyhow, it's well ruled and the most important public interest was well handled by the government. So that was the concept of 小康, the little wellness. So if I hard translate, little wellness. So in this poem, we can see it reflects something about how a prosperous period it is. I personally believe this one was written in the prosperous period in the Zhou dynasty, which was so-called 成康之治, in the king of Cheng, in the king of Kang's time. Now let's go to the poem. The title 湛露 means the crystal clear dew. The first sentence, 湛湛露斯匪阳不晞. The crystal clear dew, before the sun comes up, it never dries out. So it's a hard translation. If I translate, focus on the meanings, which means the beautiful crystal clear dew, as far as the sun comes up shining on it, it's dry out. The beautiful crystal clear dew dry out. So it's a little bit sadness and worry. Okay, the second sentence. 厌厌夜饮不醉无归. So the whole night drinking party made me fully satisfied. Without drunken, I would never go back home. 不醉无归. And this is actually described in some of the code of conduct in the Zhou dynasty. Even it's not the 100% accurate, but there's a event in the drinking party that the king of Zhou asked the participants, 无不醉, which means not a single person could not drunk himself. And then the guests and all the participants answered to the king of Zhou, 诺敢不醉, which means yes, I dare not not get drunk. So this is a dialogue between the king of Zhou and participants in the big drinking parties. So this poem actually very vividly reflects something of that. 厌厌夜饮无醉不归. So that's part of that big drinking party. The king asked everybody, today is the time to get drunk. So here is something background very important. The king of Zhou believed that too much drinking would make the dynasty, make the country corrupted and finally collapsed. So from the very beginning, the king of Zhou are very careful about drinking, as far as they learned the lesson from the previous dynasty, the Shang dynasty, and they contribute a very, very main reason for the Shang dynasty that they collapsed, defeated, is because they drink too much of wines. And anyhow, in the whole year round, most of the time you should be very careful of wine drinking. You should never drink too much wines. But in some of the most grand ceremony and festivals, the king ordered everybody should get himself drunk. So there's a few days you can get yourself drunk. And this poem actually describing those few days. And most of the days in a year, you should be very careful. You shouldn't get you drunk. You shouldn't drink too much. Okay, the first paragraph actually describe a lord, a small lord, high-ranking officials. They are the two main category of people who participated in that big drinking party. He is on his way back home in the early morning before the sun goes up, and he was such drunk, and he was feels fully satisfied. Yan Yan normally was interpreted as a very happy status, but actually Yan, if we look to the very original term, it means the heart was full of something. The heart feels comfortable with something. So here, Yan Yan Ye Yin means even from the feeling, from the perception of this poet, he was fully satisfied. Not only by the physical wine, there's so many wines because the king ordered, no drunk, no home. And so here is another thing very, very interesting is the king ordered everybody should be drunk, and apparently the poet himself, he's drunk somewhat. Anyhow, he still keep a very sharp eyesight. He noticed the dew, the crystal clear dew on his way back home, and he even saw something much more. When the sun goes up, all those crystal dews will vanish. So that's the thing about first paragraph. A person very drunk, but he still keep a very sensitive feeling and very sharp eyesight. Okay, let's continue to the second paragraph. 湛湛露斯在彼丰草. Those crystal dews, they are on the prosperous grass over there along the road. So basically this is almost identical to the first paragraph. 厌厌夜饮在宗载考. So I'm so enjoyed, I'm so satisfied with this whole night drinking party at the place of the ancestors' temples in front of my ancestors. 宗 basically refers to the place, the ancestors' temples, and actually that's the where they should hold their drinking party at, because per the code of conduct. 考 normally means the dead father, and normally it means all the ancestors passed away. The last sentence in my personal will is 互文, writing skill, interpreted in the English as intertextuality. Basically, it's not a very accurate interpretation into the English, which means 在宗载考. It can be translated at the ancestor temples, in front of my ancestors' wood panels. In the ancestor temples, the wood panels represents fully their ancestors. And also, it can be translated as 载宗载考. The 载, the very original means to load up the chariot, to load up the truck. And finally, it means to fulfill something, to do something. So here, 载宗载考, if we load something in the ancestors' temples, which means you facilitate the praying events for the ancestors. You facilitate all the foods needed for these events. You facilitate everything for these events in the ancestors' temples. 载考 means you facilitate all the food, wines, which was for the purpose to serve the ancestors. So this is so called as 互文载宗载考. Otherwise, it's really confusion that in the same sentence, basically they are with the same meanings. He used two different terms, 在 and 载. They might be the same sounding in the ancient times, but they are 100% with different meanings. 在 means at somewhere. 载 means loaded, facilitated. Okay, the first two paragraphs tell us something very important. This is the most grand ceremony in the Zhou dynasty. Very likely, or maybe very surely, organized by the king of Zhou. And even because in this event, you should be drunk. And in other events, you could never drink too much. So that's why I conclude this is most likely the most grand ceremony. And the season in the autumn season. So according to the history book, there's 4 main ceremonies for the king of Zhou in the 4 springs. In the 4 seasons. And in the autumn and in the springtime is even more important. So in this poem, it describes the autumn-spring ceremony, the most grand, most important ceremony and events, and which is ended with a overnight drinking party. And this term was called 秋长, and I personally believe because this is just after the harvest, everything is abundant, and they also is sort of the celebrations to the harvest. Okay, the third paragraph. 湛湛露斯，在彼杞棘. The crystal clear dew is on those grasses of qi and ji. So qi and ji is 2 types of grasses along the road. So it's basically quite similar to the first 2 paragraphs. 显允君子，莫不令德. All those bright, shining, generous laws, none of them that do not do a lot of good deeds. So this is a little complicated. Let's make it more easily. All those generous, nice-looking laws, every one of them, they have done a lot of good deeds. 显 bright, shining. It's telling us the outlook of these laws. 允 means fair, doing something with fairness. And this is also another alternative way of saying 中. 中国 means we do everything in the middle. In which middle? Among a group of people, among group of laws. So that's the philosophy of 允 and 中 means. The politics in the Zhou dynasty basically is the king of Zhou with a bunch of families, big families. The families share the same blood, or the families with the marriage relationships, and even some families without the blood or marriage relationship with the king of Zhou. Anyhow, the king of Zhou should be fair to all of them, and thus to keep the politics in a peaceful way. So that's basically the meaning of 中 or 中国, do everything in the middle. And 允 means fairness. So this tradition actually starts far before the Zhou dynasty. And a very, very famous emperor in the epic times, he said, 允之其中. Yun here share the same meaning here. Just fairly take the things in the middle, which means you cut. If it's an interest among group of people, you should split. You should not contribute. You should divide it, all this interest among the peoples fairly, and thus this will keep your country safe and in peace, in harmony. So that's the term. It's very important, special term in the Chinese ancient philosophy. 令德 means he facilitate a lot of good deeds. He do a lot of the good things for the people. In the third paragraph, the poem, the image of the poet, shows up a little bit. In the first two paragraphs, the poet described about the crystal duel, the sun imagined in his mind, because the sun still not go up yet, and the grassland. But in the third paragraph, he describes someone others, 显允君子, those bright, shining, generous laws. So this is somewhat subjective. So from his own eyes, he looked around, not only the crystal clear duels, the grassland, the qi and the ji, the two type of grass, but with him, a bunch of laws. They all just finished the big drinking party, and they are all on their way back to their home. So here, in the third paragraph, the poet geniusly extended the feelings by himself. He's very quite abundant. He's so satisfied and he's drunken, and he extend this feeling to the whole, all the laws who participates this drinking party, and they are all the best laws in the world. They do so many good deeds. 其桐其椅，其实离离. The parasol trees and the cypress trees, their fruits are hanging down prosperously. Wu is wutong in Chinese, the parasol tree or phoenix tree. The yi is not chair. In modern Chinese, it means a chair, but in the Zhou dynasty, it means a type of wood, and most likely it's a type of 柏树, cypress tree. 楷替君子，莫不令仪. All those glorious, happy laws, not one of them that follows the code of conduct of the Zhou dynasty. 楷替 is a very frequent word in the Book of Songs. It used to describe the wonderful, glorious outlook of the laws of the high-ranking officials. And the Kai is the very original meaning of Kai, means the joyful and the happiness when on the way of back from a victory. So it's the music, it's the atmosphere to welcome the victory troops back. So that's the meaning of that Kai. Ti means the order. So today the Di means, it's the same word actually, but with different sound when we're reading the Book of Songs. In this poem, it's reading as Ti, T-E-T, 楷替君子. Ti, the very original meaning, means the order. So when you ramp up something with a rope. First round, the second round, the third round. So T means the order when you ramp something with rope. And here it actually refers the peaceful order, the nicely organized order about a group of laws or about a group of people. So 楷替君子 means the glorious, joyful, happy, but very nicely ordered or a group of people. They are walking or marching in harmony. 莫不令仪 actually telling the same thing. 仪 today most people think 仪 means the decoration, the outlooking, the clothes you wear. Well, the very original meaning, it means the code of conduct, especially about dressing and outlook, the decorations. So the last sentence basically is sort of the praising of these laws who's back from the drinking party and on their way to home. All those laws, they look so joyful. They walk in a harmony, peacefully, and they all followed the code of conduct. Okay, we have finished the whole poem. It's about big drinking party. Or after a big drinking party in the autumn season, the most grand party in a year, very probably held by the king of Zhou and a bunch of lords who participate this drinking party. They are on their way back home, and the poet is one of the lords among these lords, and he described very vividly, very sensitively. Even himself was as same drunk as those lords he write about in this poem. And all in all this reflected a very abundant, very satisfied a group of people. And this group of people, basically, they resemble the whole country, the period of time, which could be one of the best time or best period in the Chinese history. And for the Zhou people, this is a very, very simple poem. And the difficulty for today's people, we don't know the social status, the real life, how the real life it is, and with some of the difficulties on the wordings. So first thing first, we should know the background of the history, and then be careful with every character in the Book of Songs. The ordinary explanation not always works, and maybe make the interpretation to the poem a wrong way. This poem has some very important impact to the later generations. So where you saw the term in a Chinese poem, 湛露, basically it always referred to a grand drinking party, and very likely it's a royal drinking party, because the very original poem, the poem we have today, is about a drinking party held by the king of Zhou. And the second impact is about the first sentence. 湛湛露斯，匪阳不晞. So the later poets, they derived some other meanings from this sentence, which focused on the time passed by, and it paralleled the short period of lifetime of this crystal jewel to a human being. So, which means from our perspective as a human, the duel's life is so short until the sun goes up. The duel vanished. And this is short, right? And our human's lifetime is just as short as this crystal duel until the sun goes up, and our life gone very quickly. The delicacy of this writing is it related the short life of the crystal duel of a human to two very ordinary objects, the crystal duel and the sun. And especially the sun is an alternative to the time passing by, to a date. So wherever you saw these two items together, you saw the crystal duel and you see the sun is coming up, very likely you will thought about, wow, how about my life? How long would my life last? So that's the genius writing of this poem. Just two examples how this writing was applied. One is very famous poet by 曹操短歌行譬如朝露去日苦多 and another is from the musical department poetry in the Han Dynasty. 青青园中葵，朝露待日晞. So in these two poems, they all refers to the very short life, the swift time passing by. Okay, that's for today. Bye-bye.